Perfect.
Oh, looks like we're live on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. Just a moment. Just give us one moment here while it starts to load itself. Yes, exactly. All right. So we are live on YouTube, and we are going to talk about CRM in 2020 today. And I'm joined by Anthony Steers, who is in London, all the way in London. Well, just outside London, about an hour north of London. And he is the telephone assassin. And before we start, Anthony, just give people your quick bio, and we may have other people popping in to have a chat as well. But we'll start off with Anthony. How are you doing, Anthony?
Fantastic. So yeah, I'm known as the telephone assassin. I wrote a book a few years ago. I basically help with some companies, it's sales training, some it's customer service training. I just like to think of it as teaching people some good manners and some advanced common sense, give them a bit of a process to follow as well.
Excellent. And I'm John Golan from Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. And always good to teach people good manners. We need more good manners in the world, I think. And maybe coming out of this crisis, maybe people will revert to being a little nicer and more mannerly to each other going forward. Who knows?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things, Anthony, coming out of this is digital processes, right? If you didn't have good digital processes in your company and suddenly you had to go to a virtual organization or supply chain was interrupted, all these other things, it was going to be really, really hard for you to get a handle on everything. And now is the time where kind of the chickens have come home to roost, if you like, because now you need to pay attention to your digital processes, and analog ways of working aren't going to work anymore. So do you think this is finally the moment where the argument over whether a company should deploy a CRM, because at the end of the day, let's face it, it's all about the revenue. Do you think this is a question of now when as opposed and which CRM as opposed to should I?
Absolutely. I think with what's going on at the moment, people are really starting to appreciate what technology can do in order of keeping us connected and allowing us to do face-to-face stuff. I think that businesses are having to carry on, and we need to figure out ways of transferring files, sharing information with our colleagues. Yeah, absolutely. You can't hide anymore. Technology is only going to help you. It's just making sure that you invest and you know what it is you're trying to get from the system. But certainly efficiencies go up as long as you don't try and automate too much of the process and you strip away all the service. Actually, these digital processes, and that's part of what I teach people, is this sales process, and it breaks down the human elements, the admin elements, the automated elements, the delivery, right the way through. And actually, you need to keep track of all of it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, it's a great way of you're putting your sales process in place so that you can actually reinforce it, but also you can monitor it. Because let's face it, sales process shouldn't be a static thing. It should be a dynamic thing. It should be something that you're constantly reviewing, because let's face it, it's the buyers who change it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll find that there is a kind of buyers, an emotional journey that people will go on, but the sales processes are evolving all the time. We get new types of technologies. There's that debate of do you use social media before a part of the telemarketing? Do you have digital strategy? There's no right and wrong way of doing it. It's just about embracing the bits that kind of touch the people you want to get to.
Yeah, it is, and like you said, I mean, part of that is just having it properly laid out for you. And I think, as you said, it should be. I always find that this is something to try and explain to people. CRM it's an addition and a support. It's not a subtraction, right? It doesn't mean that just because you put a CRM in place, it means that you don't interact with customers anymore, that you don't have that human element. And of course you do. What it should do is actually help you stay more focused, more informed, so you can have higher value interactions when you do have them.
Absolutely. Your CRM is like your company's memory of every conversation, every interaction. And because so many people can touch a client, you need access to those memories. I always say information is ammunition. Everybody has the same favorite topic, which is themselves. So if you're going to do research, store that information somewhere. A simple thing that I get a lot of people to do is to just have a useful links column. that links to the profiles of the people that they've been researching. Oh, it looks like Frankie's able to join us now too.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, no, I think absolutely, and I think that's the whole point about it. Is, as I said, you should be seen as additive and supportive, and the fact that it's arming you with the information, as you said, the ammunition you need to in order to be able to have intelligent, insightful conversation at the point of impact, because that's the other thing, especially if you have like Pipeline with the mobile CRM app. It means that if I bump into you in the street, well, I won't bump into you now because we have to social distance, but if I come within 6 feet of you in the street, I could still pull it up on my phone and know everything about you and your company and have an intelligent interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that CRMs are so clever now, they can store and pull information from all over the place. So when you're booking meetings a few weeks in advance, quite often it's useful to be able to have a quick update on what's their latest blog, what are they posting about. It just gives you a bit more information about them, which is going to end up helping you to engage and connect with them. And then you get a stronger relationship, which means they're going to tell you more. And the more they tell you, the more that you can help them. Hello, Frank.
Absolutely. Hey, Frank, how you doing?
Hi, guys. Hey, Don and I were having a really great conversation over on Microsoft Hangouts, so,
Oh, yeah.
You'll
Well,
be right
we like to keep it interesting here, if nothing else. We're trying to keep people.
We're like, where is everybody? And then all of a sudden he goes, hey, I just got an email from John. Goes, I think we're on the wrong call. So we were talking all about how hot it is in Palm Springs or Desert Springs or whatever spring he's in. So
all right,
he should be here. He should be here in it. Yeah, he'll be here in a second.
Where are you today, Frank?
I'm in my home office in Philadelphia. So
right. So it's probably warm enough there. So we shouldn't talk too much about weather, because poor Anthony's in outside London, so he's about an hour north and probably not enjoying the weather that we are.
You say that, and we got 24 degrees and some sunshine today, and 3 days of pure sunshine coming. So
perfect.
Yeah. I was going to say it's the same every day, cold and rainy, right?
Yeah. We only, unfortunately, Anthony, we only have about 8 months of sunshine coming. But anyway, so listen, Frank, what Anthony and I were talking about here is, number one, I think this whole crisis that have come upon us have really showed organizations that digital processes are so critically important. And if you've paid lip service to them in the past, or you've ignored them, you probably had a pretty hard time adjusting to the crisis. So do you think the argument about whether you should use a CRM is over now, and it's more about which one and when should you implement it?
Yeah, that's the truth. Absolutely. And because, every sales team should be using one, because you got to track your business, right? It's kind of like, everybody has their own financials, right? If you don't know what your financials are, then you're not saving, you're not investing, you're not doing all those other things. So if you look at it personally like that, yeah, you should be using one, because every salesperson is accountable for their book of business and managing that book of business, and they're accountable to rolling that up. And whether you do it in a CRM system or an Excel spreadsheet or Indian smoke signals, you need to do it in some particular way. And there are enough really good CRM platforms out there that cater to the beginners all the way to, the most senior advanced. So, and by the way, salespeople know they're supposed to use one. So the years of I'm supposed to use a CRM system, that's not an excuse anymore.
Yeah, no, it's not an excuse anymore, but it's amazing. It's amazing how much managers or organizations will, they'll implement a CRM and then they won't actually use it themselves. Even the managers won't use it themselves, the salespeople, and then they wonder why the salespeople won't use it. They don't embed it into their work process.
Yeah, the funny thing is having one and using one are two fundamentally different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a couple of interesting things that you said there. I wanted to pick up with Anthony as well is Anthony, when you're working with people, like as Frank said, they know they should be using it, okay, but they're not. So when you work with organizations, how do you get people, and not just from a CRM point of view, but even from a sales process point of view, to understand that it only works if you adopt it, it only works if you reinforce it, it only works if you practice it?
Yeah. So my experience typically is that most salespeople have had a bad experience with CRMs with regards to either not being fully populated and set up to begin with, so they haven't got access to everything in one place, or the connection to it is really weak and it's slow, and they feel like it's slowing them down and it's an extra task to do. The way I try and convince them is I show them that information is ammunition, and actually the more information you have, the easier it is to influence a conversation and steer it in a certain direction, the easier it is to build rapport with somebody. There's things that you can do to your advantage, and once you realize that, you start going, I can't remember all 100 prospects, everything, all of that stuff, and actually it becomes like that Rolodex, that black book in your pocket that now is endless. I always say you can't make too many notes in a CRM system, but you can spend too long making the notes. Okay. You're spending 15, 20 minutes writing an essay, you're putting off making your next call. But if you need to put 3 pages of notes in there, then it'll probably be useful next time you come to it.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of it, Frank. Maybe we've got to teach people how to be more concise and more deliberate and targeted in the kind of information that they put into systems. Maybe that's part of the problem, is we just say, put in your notes. And to one person, that's 3 very targeted, very informative bullet points. And to another person, it's a stream of consciousness.
Well, on that note, I'm working with a software company at the moment. We're doing some virtual training, obviously. And as part of the process, I get them to map out their sales cycle points. This is every step between identifying the prospect and getting a testimonial after doing the work. And lots of people split them into small groups. I think the highest number of points was 17, but somebody had 9, somebody had 12, somebody had 17. I turned that into 59 points.
Right. Because
actually it got broken down into much smaller steps, because what you tend to find is if you don't break it down into every single possible step, salespeople they cut corners. And if you get away with it, you keep cutting corners. And before you know it, you get to an end of a conversation where you're not in control, or you don't know what they're going to say next because you haven't gone through the journey with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Frank, from your point of view, why do you think it is that digital processes have not really been adopted as widely as they should have, and why companies have kind of paid lip service to them?
Well, I guess something that Anthony had said is, I think in the majority of applications that are put together, whether digital or traditional, I mean, you name it, are really well thought out, right? There hasn't been a requirements document where they actually sat down from the bottom up, not the top down. Right? Doing it from the top down is the wrong way to do it, meaning going and getting requirements from the CEO and then the CFO, then the head of sales down is the wrong way to do it. You have to start with the salespeople and the people in the field and work at the field manager level, because they're the force multipliers of the whole thing, and their individual reps, and get a group of those individuals together and truly find out what the requirements are, because you go back at it, and salespeople fundamentally care about 3 things. 1, can I make more money using the system? 2, can I make more money faster using the system, which has everything to do about efficiency? Because Anthony also said that, hey, you can put in 3 pages of notes, but are actually moving on to the next one, or you have to make it more efficient for them. And 4th one, which is really important, is I want freedom. And what freedom means is I want my manager off my back. I want the executives off my back. I want to be able to do my job. Don't go in all the time in the system and tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm not doing right in the system, because I'm going to go back to you and say, well, you never made the system right for me in the first place. So one of the things that we do with every single client is we sit down and we create in-depth requirements documents off of business workflows that are driven by the user, the physical people, whether you're the lead manager and people doing inside lead follow-up, all the way till you win something, and even when you're sending out the invoice, taking it to cash, right? You have to do it for the people who are physically using the system. And then all the other digital things that are involved. Those are all the efficiency plays that they need to use in order to be efficient along that journey. And you map that out along the journey as well, because when you put your tech stack together, that's where you get the efficiency. So I don't believe it's that they haven't paid attention to the digital footprint and the digital technology that's out there. I don't think they've actually started with the right individuals to map it out in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point, and I do think that's where a lot of, I mean, not just CRM, but a lot of software projects fall down is because the wrong, you know, they
Yeah.
haven't. It's not an inclusive process, and it's not a well thought out process. And I see Don, are you with us? Hello, Don. I think Don's still having a few difficulties joining us.
On that issue, on what you were saying
Yeah.
there is, I always explain this to clients. It was interesting you talked about bottom up. I always say that to create this sales cycle points, they have to create it because they've got to own this process. If you're going to ask them to put it into practice, my job is to just fill in the gaps and kind of go, yeah, but how are we going to take final responsibility so that we prevent pipeline constipation? Because once you have this mapped out, I get what you mean, Frankie, about people not wanting to be watched by their manager. If you felt that you were supported by your manager, having these digital processes means it's really quick and easy to spot the bottlenecks. So each individual rep struggling at different points in the process, their manager can give them specific support or training on those particular areas, and it will just slightly tweak their pipeline just so that it starts to move faster. And if they see it as getting support from their manager rather than being monitored, it might help shift their perspective on why they should be using it.
That's right.
Absolutely, and that's what I think is a really important point is the fact that you have to have it. You have to have it so that the benefit is seen by the salesperson, because otherwise, right, Frank, we're going to get stuck in that whole cycle of another CRM, another initiative du jour. I'm just going to ignore this.
Yep.
And
that's what they end up doing.
Yeah, and let's be honest, salespeople do like to get the blame thrower out, and a system is a good thing to blame.
Blame thrower, love it. So Frank, apart from getting all of the right people involved in the designing the rollout, what are some things you can do post rollout to make it a positive experience and where people will really adopt it and use it?
Yeah, well, you have to put as much of the sales management and the management of selling in the system as possible. Like, for example, forecasting is very difficult to do in a lot of CRM systems, both from the process of forecasting and actually the rolling of the reporting. The second you take something like forecasting out of your CRM system, right, you just devalued it by about 50%. So post, right, try to get as much as what you're doing in selling inside of that CRM system and make it, right, the de facto place where people go to do their business, right? Whether it be updating accounts, updating contacts, it should be the single source of record for those particular items, because then they're in there physically using it, right? And then at the same time, post it, right? You have to watch how they're physically using the system, right? You have to look at the behaviors, because in every CRM system, there's a history. It's like that little, popcorn trail, someone dropping popcorn, you can follow where they're going, right? All that's in those CRM systems. So you then now have to watch what they do, and you have to hold them accountable to doing the key things that they have to do so that they can get that information, so that information that becomes an advantage. Because if they don't follow their sales process correctly and they don't put in the data correctly and they don't do other particular things correctly, then it's never going to be of value to them in the future. So what they can do post is make sure that when they first set it up, the expectations of the usage and adoption of it and what they're going to physically do in the system will benefit them. Because once you start taking things out of your CRM system, you're going to be doomed to having that just become a glorified Rolodex.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think those are all critical points. And Don, I think you can weigh in here as well. I think if you just unmute yourself. I'll just wait for Don to unmute himself. Anthony, anything else from your point of view where you think how we can ensure that things are actually, CRM is actually adopted and we don't go through that whole like traumatic experience that we often do when we roll out a new technology?
I think there's two elements to it. The first one is that I always say a CRM system is as good as the training that comes with it. So I would encourage anybody who's putting this new CRM system to even record their own how-to videos to share with their staff, so that they understand this, they have access to learn, they've got no excuse not to use it. And that way they feel like they've built a library around their own support library that can be branded. It shows that they've got their own induction. It's a really good thing for a company to do and to offer. Then you've got the other route, which is you'll usually have a couple of early adopters, people who really like it. If you can put some extra effort into them and really nurture them in the first couple of weeks, if you can get them getting some early wins, they are great success stories to then go and share with the rest of the team. And what I often do, and this is a bit cheeky, is when I train a larger team, I tend to focus in on a couple of the new starters who haven't got any bad habits yet. I give them some extra follow-up. Because if I can get them to the top of the leaderboard in the sales thing, they will become my ambassador for they're using my stuff. So there's two things that I think would potentially.
I would think that's a great idea, Frank. Do you agree? Like trying to get some early adopters or power users in place.
Absolutely, and the other thing that I want to mention too, a lot of organizations try and make using their CRM system part of their incentive compensation package for their salespeople. I'm here to say don't do that, because you can't pay a salesperson enough to use the CRM system, because the majority of them, right, it's pennies to what they actually make when they sell. Instead, make it the manager's problem, because remember that your frontline manager is the force multiplier. They're the ones who can spread the accountability to the salesperson's level. So if they do have a superstar who uses that, right, that manager, right, can use that superstar, that individual who uses it really well, and cross-pollinate those best practices, but compensate the manager and hold the manager accountable for holding their people accountable for using the system. And that's where you get the economies of scale, because you can't do that. Otherwise, you're hand-to-hand combat. If you're a large sales team, and I'm going to define large of 100 people or more, let's say, right, you can't manage 100 individual salespeople doing it if you're a sales ops person. So that poor sales ops person is just going to fail if you're holding them accountable for the adoption of the physical system itself, right? Make the frontline managers do it. Get those best practices of other people. Have those people say, hey, look, I win when I have opportunities that look like this, and I manage them like this, and I win them like this. And if I do those 5 or 6 things inside my CRM system, I have an optimal opportunity profile of I know of when I win, of when I lose, or when I have a no decision, right? All three, I have to know optimally what does that look like when I use my CRM system. And then I can hold myself as a manager accountable when I'm looking at my reps going, wow, I'm looking at your system right now. You have 50 opportunities in there. 25 of them don't have the behaviors that we would expect them to have in the CRM system for when you win. So please explain to me what's going on with those. And it's what we call optimal opportunity profiling, not optimal customer. That's different, right? Optimal customer is right there in this industry, or have this many employees, or this revenue, or this product set. This is based off of what your opportunities physically look like, the behaviors and the characteristics of them as your salespeople manage them across the journey. That data is in your CRM system. If you can get to it and look at it, you can look at it by manager and say, look, optimally, Frank, when you do these 5 things, or when our superstars do these 5 things, or our very successful people do these 5 things in the system, they win more than they lose. So what is that optimal component? Then, as Anthony said, cross-pollinate it through training to everybody else.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense, and I think that's something that people should make note of what you just outlined there, because I think you'll avoid a lot of the unnecessary pitfalls that happen otherwise. Okay, so
sorry to jump in there. That one final thing. I think you've highlighted why a lot of the time rollouts fail or fizzle out is because the ambassadors aren't the managers, and you need the managers to walk that talk themselves and live it, more breathe it, before they can start convincing everybody else that they need to do the same.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Absolutely.
No, it's no, absolutely. It's good to underline that, because basically, people take their lead from their managers. So if I communicate, it's like with coaching, right? If I say, hey, Anthony and Frank, we're going to do a weekly coaching session. I'm going to do a weekly coaching session with you, and put on your calendar. And then most of the time I cancel it. What does that say to you? It says, well, it's not that important. Same thing. If I'm the manager and I say, yeah, let's review your pipeline, and you say, oh, I'll bring up the CRM and say, no, just, let's just go through whatever your notes are there, or let's go through this spreadsheet I have. And then you go, okay, well, that's not important then, obviously, either. So yeah, if you don't have the managers as the cheerleaders, it's not going to work.
Yep.
So let's go to our final topic here. So let's talk the future of CRM. So maybe take out your crystal ball and look into the future. Obviously, this latest crisis has just showed us how futile it is to try and predict the future. But anyway, maybe start with you, Frank. What do you think the future for CRM is, and where do you think it goes from here?
Well, I think there's two, and I'm not going to pick the obvious. I'll say some things about the obvious of what this whole pandemic's done to everybody. But coming up to the pandemic, and by the way, going past it, is the CRM system has to be embedded in what we call lead to cash, which is the second you generate a relationship with an individual who's interested in your product and service, right? That relationship goes well beyond selling them. It goes all the way to invoicing and service after the fact, et cetera, right? If you go and look at the majority of CRM systems today, they stop when you win a customer. Mm-hmm. So, what about integrating it into your financials? What about integrating into customer service? What about integrating into all these other things that happen upon servicing the customer post selling them? So the future of many CRM systems has to be fully integrated lead to cash infrastructure, right? Which is a tech stack, right? The future of it is tightly integrating that technology so that you have a view of the customer, whether you're the salesperson sitting in the CRM system, you want to know what happened with invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you don't have to pick up the phone and call finance, right? That's all about efficiency. So a lot of our work that we're doing today with our customers goes well beyond, I just won something, goes well beyond implementing it, invoicing it, right? All of that has to be with servicing the customer, because if you don't do that, what ends up happening is the burden of a lot of that work falls back on the salespeople. Hey, Frank, your client ABC hasn't paid yet. Can you call them? Well, no, wait a second. That's not my job. That's finance's job or accounting's job, or So make it the job of the people whose jobs those are, and don't push it back on the poor people using the CRM system. And the other part about that as well is we ask salespeople to do way too much data entry in their CRM systems, right? They're doing other people's work for them because the systems are not integrated. Take finance, for example, right? Oh, hey, Frank, you didn't enter these other 4 fields that we need for invoicing. Go in and fill it in. And I'm like, that's not my job, right? Give licenses to the finance people to go into the system and put the data in. Because as Anthony had mentioned earlier, right, that's the problem that you have, is where you're putting too much burden on all the data on the actual salespeople. And I always say, look, if data entry in a CRM system does not help me as a salesperson win a deal, you shouldn't be doing it. Because make it somebody else's problem and give them the license to the system and make them go in and do it. And that's the great thing of having an integrated platform. If you can do that, you can move data around from one system to the other, and you can integrate it, because with all the custom APIs already built out there to almost every single system that's out there, the freeway is already built. You just have to connect it together. Yeah. And the second part of that is, that's what, in the pandemic world today, all this technology, you have to tie it all together now, because with the virtual world that we have, I always said that right now in the world of and what's coming out of this whole pandemic is probably some really good things, such as, I'm not quite sure what percentage of people are actually going to go back and work in a physical office. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good news is traffic's going to go down, pollution is going to go down, all those other things. The bad news is the relationship that you and I have is going to look more like this. How do we integrate that into our CRM system? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a big change.
Yeah, I think those are fantastic points, and I do agree with you. I think we're going to see a change in the way we work. We as a company actually went largely virtual 6 years ago in a strategic decision, and it's really helped us, and we have understood now. We have actually been able to build really, really good relationships with customers and stuff, and a lot of it is majority of it is virtual. So it can be done, but to your point, Don, about everything else, it needs a strategy behind it if you're going to do that. And Anthony, so the future of CRM.
Well, I think that, like I say, the importance of it should be, the penny should be dropping, really. The abundance of information now as well should be starting to convince you that you've got to be storing it and organizing it somewhere. I think in the future, salespeople were inherently lazy. One amusing task I love to do with people is you play them a 5-minute call recording and then you ask them all to make notes as if they were putting it into the CRM and see what variations you get in effort and detail. That's always, I think, can be quite a funny one. I've got a feeling a lot of people will attach, obviously emails and stuff go straight into your CRM, but you can now attach call recordings, you can get call transcriptions. I think as transcription starts to come in and play a part, what some salespeople might get into a pattern of doing is at the end of their calls saying something, a trigger word, which would be, okay, John, well, just as a quick recap then, this is what we've talked about, this is what you're going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. Is that agreed? Perfect. Okay, because what that would mean then is next time we have our conversation, I can go to the transcript, look for little recap. It will take me straight to that last little recap, and then I can go, so I said this is what we agreed, he agreed, perfect, that's what's happening next. And all of a sudden, you're back up to date really quickly. So I think you mentioned about, Frank, about obviously using Zoom and stuff. Whether there's enough space in the clouds up there to be storing loads and loads of video calls, perhaps not, but snippets of it, perhaps using them. I always say you should use email to create a paper trail of the conversations you've already had rather than trying to have the conversation through email. So whether it's dictation, storing this stuff, sure, but like I say, we have an abundance of information now, and I have a memory like a sieve. And the reason I'm good at sales and good at relationships is I read my notes and I make lots of notes. Simple.
Well, unlike you, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So yeah, I mean, I have to track everything. And Anthony, you make a really good point, is the fact that it's surprising the number of companies that don't have email integrated into their CRM system yet, right? So,
yeah.
So when you look at it, like, what? So the answer to that is any kind of communication now, whether it's basic communication, integrating emails, phone transcripts, video snippets, whatever it might be, communication today is going to be more trackable, traceable, recordable than ever. So I think having a plan on a couple of things: one, how you're going to do it; two, the technology that you're going to use to do it, holding people accountable to it; and then the fourth one is there's going to be a lot of legalities around what you can and cannot do moving forward with regards to tracking and making it public and where you're storing it. Heck, even Sarbanes-Oxley and other things that may come into play here. That if you're a finance company, right, there's lots of stuff that you have to really be careful of with regards to level of types of communication that you're going to start doing. So I do think that it's going to become a lot more legal, but I think that you have to be able to start doing something and recording this. And I think CRM systems are going to have to play a bigger part and a bigger role. And by the way, it's going to get more expensive, right? Because if you're going to store information like this and you're going to house it on your CRM platform, whether you're going to do it virtually in the Cloud and Dynamics or inside of Salesforce, right? You're paying by the memory space, right? So, and I think, Anthony, you had mentioned, parking it in the cloud somewhere, right? That means data lakes and data pools and things that you're going to be doing to store data outside your CRM system, but plugging it in so you can get to it in near real time. That's going to become huge as well. So managing this is going to become a big part moving forward.
So do you think then that one of the solutions to ease this is actually for salespeople to be better and have a wish list rather than a database, so that they've got less data but more information and they've got a higher conversion ratio, and it's more about converting as many of my 100 prospects this year rather than sifting through 5,000 records of data? Maybe.
Yeah. And by the way, the question is what data, right? So if you can have requirements in the data that you want out of your system, right? You can then tie that to what we want our people to put in the system. And you have negotiations with those said individuals in their CRM systems, what they're willing to put in, what they're not willing to put in, so that you're not doing work for other people like the finance group or et cetera, right? You're doing what you should be doing on the sales side, and you're going to report it, right? Yeah, then you have a really good fighting chance at using that data to help you target those opportunities that you should be working on, target those opportunities that shouldn't be in your pipeline, that they should have been jettisoned out, and those that the sales trainers and the coaches and the managers can help you on, right? That is all the efficiency game. And I think that with all that data out there and all the communication we have out there, having a plan and having a structured requirements of how you're going to run it is really important, and then holding people accountable for physically using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like great points. And actually your other point earlier about integration and connecting to other systems, I think that's critical too. You got to get everything working together. All right. Well, listen, this has been a fascinating discussion, and we probably could go on for another while. But there's so many takeaways here. Before we go, Frank, you want to tell people just a little bit more about yourself and how they can learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. My company's called Quick Start Strategies, and we really specialize in lead all the way to cash and the technology infrastructure. So the three big things that everybody talks about is, what's my process, right? What are the components of the process? What technology should I best use to manage that based off of how my buyers buy, how I sell, and also the culture of my organization. And then finally, deploying it, right? Having people use it, adopt it, measure it, and make me better. So we're a combination of software and services organization. We're small. We don't take a lot of clients every year because we specialize in really getting our clients up and running. But we have a very tight group of clients. We've done over 230 companies in the past 7 years. And we also have a really huge database of best practices and data that we help companies with regards to, what their best practices should be with regards to how their system should look and the data that they get out. So we can also help them benchmark. So that's where we spend our time. And I'm a process and data guy, and it's kind of geeky, but I love it.
Yeah, and it's very, very important, and more important than ever. And I think that's what's been proved. And thank you, Anthony, as well. And before we go, just remind everybody again, I just love hearing you tell your pen names.
There's the telephone assassin.
There you go.
Like I say, it's nowhere near as aggressive as it sounds, but generally, I just help people have better conversations. I always say, I'm not going to help you sell your product better. I'll just help you stay in control of that conversation and how to take them through that emotional journey to decide that they want to do business with you. I'm quite lucky, very British in the fact that I lead with very good manners, very softly. It's quite sensitive, and it just means that while what's going on is happening and you do need to be sensitive, my approach works perfectly. So it's really polite. It's your job. You're depriving your market by not letting them know that you're there. But the analogy I always give and people like is that it should feel like you're dropping off a pizza menu, not knocking on their door and taking an order. So yeah, if people need help, you can buy the book, get in touch. My number is very easy to find. And I look forward to hopefully chatting again soon, John. And like you said, we've had a few of these kind of conversations over the years, and if it wasn't for technology, it would have never have happened. So thank you for inviting me.
There you go.
Yeah, 100%. Great. Well, listen, thanks very much, Anthony. Thank you, Frank. Thank you all for joining us. And for those who are going to watch the recording, I think there's a lot of fantastic information in here. You got to get your CRM going. Who knows? The whole world is changing right now. We've just had a crisis where, as I said at the beginning, if you didn't have good digital processes in place, you probably struggled for a bit. So now is the time to take the opportunity to do it, but do it purposefully and do it with a plan. As Frank said, do it with a plan. And as Anthony says as well, get those better conversations, understand what you're saying, know what you're saying, have a record of it. And I think the world will be a better place for salespeople, because let's face it, the recovery is going to be led by salespeople. All right, my name is John Golden, Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine, Pipeliner CRM. See you all for another discussion very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.